سعد الدين الحريري رئيسا لمجلس الوزراء.
Good afternoon. You're watching the English newscast here on Future Television. I'm Linda Singh, and these are today's headlines. Christians around the world are celebrating Christmas. Pope Francis urges an end to the fighting in Syria in his Christmas address at the Vatican. President Michel Aoun attends Christmas Mass in Kirki and says he will be working to end the vacuum in state institutions. A Russian military plane with 92 people on board crashes into the Black Sea shortly after taking off. No survivors are reported. President Michel Aoun says he will be working to end the vacuum in state institutions. Aoun, however, did not specify when the much-anticipated electoral law will be endorsed after his meeting with Maronite Patriarch Shadarai in Kirki. Aoun then joined the First Lady to attend the Christmas morning Mass, during which Rai held a sermon congratulating believers on the occasion of Christmas. He also condemned corruption in state institutions and conflicts over appointments in public offices over sectarian backgrounds. Rai noted the presence of more than 2 million refugees in Lebanon, citing security and economic threats against the country. The Patriarch urged state institutions and international organizations to ensure a proper solution to the refugee crisis and granting them the right to return to their homelands. He also called on politicians to address the pressing social issues like poverty and the deterioration of living standards rather than acting for selfish reasons. Pope Francis has urged an end to the fighting in Syria as he gave his Christmas address at the Vatican, saying far too much blood has been spilled in the conflict. His traditional Urbi and Orbi message was linked by a common thread of war, violence and suffering. Speaking to some 40,000 people gathered in St. Peter's Square, the Pope said, quote, "It is time for weapons to be still forever and the international community to actively seek a negotiated solution," end of quote. Francis, marking the fourth Christmas season since his appointment in 2013, also urged Palestinians and Israelis to have the courage to put aside hate and revenge and write a new page of history as they face renewed tension after a UN resolution condemning Israeli settlements on the occupied land. Christian worshippers attended Christmas Day church services in the West Bank town of Bethlehem. The Latin Patriarch of Jerusalem, Pier Battista Pizzabella, led the service in the Church of the Nativity, revered by Christians as the birthplace of Jesus. The church pews were packed with worshippers attending the service. The annual Christmas Eve Mass in Bethlehem also attracted many pilgrims from around the world. It was attended by Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas and other officials. And in Iraq, Christians have flocked to Bartella, a northern town recently retaken from Islamic State, to celebrate Christmas for the first time since 2013. Ashraf Fahim reports.
For the first time in 3 years, Christmas bells are ringing in Bartella. Iraqi forces recently retook the town near Mosul from Islamic State. The town was home to thousands of Assyrian Christians, but most fled in 2014 when the militants overran large parts of Iraq. Now residents like Shurut Tawfiq are home for Christmas.
This is the best day of my life. I'm so happy to be back in my area and to my church. No matter what those rats Islamic State do, they'll never keep us from our homes.
Iraq's Christians are emerging from a nightmare. They were harshly persecuted under the Islamic State and given an ultimatum: pay a tax, convert to Islam, or face execution. Bishop Musa Shamali said the celebrations are bittersweet.
Today we're experiencing a mixture of sadness and happiness. We had hoped that life would be back to normal, but Islamic State destroyed many holy places that brought together the children of this nation.
With Bartilla badly damaged, it will be some time before the residents can fully return. But for a few days in Christmas at least, life feels a little more normal in this ancient Christian town.
Moving on to the UK, Queen Elizabeth has missed a traditional Christmas church service for the first time in nearly 30 years. Buckingham Palace says she would not attend due to a heavy cold. Elizabeth, the world's longest reigning living monarch, and her husband Prince Philip reportedly suffered what the palace described as heavy colds this week. And coming up next, thousands brace for powerful typhoon Nokten in the Philippines. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching the English newscast here on Future Television. UNHCR and the Quai Branly Museum in Paris have organized an afternoon of activities and gift-giving for refugees. The goal was to give French children a glimpse of the world of the 65 millions displaced by war and conflict. Keys to the message were two of the athletes from the first Olympic refugee team, one from South Sudan and another from Syria.
A season of gifts. A French boy writes his name for a present to someone he doesn't know. A refugee from South Sudan, one of 1.3 million. Two stars of the Rio Refugee Olympic team, Poor, an 800-meter runner from South Sudan, and Rami, a swimmer from Syria, are here to help. And to explain the refugee experience. Rami speaks of war in Syria, of flight, and of a swimming challenge. He was part of the refugee team at the Rio Olympics in 2016.
I have goals now. Everything was bad. Now everything is good for me. So I hope I can do my best.
We have the same feeling because we are human beings, all of us. Either you are a refugee or you have your own country.
Yeshpour Biel's odyssey was even harder. He tells of fleeing fighting at 10, losing his family, living on his own for 12 years in a camp in Kenya, then running in Rio. A girl asks if he found his family again.
I think for the first time I talked to them, it was when I was in Brazil, but almost 12 years I don't know where they were. It was my first time when I was in Rio, I communicated with them.
Even if the children go back just with one memory of today, maybe one sentence, one story, they will remember. It's already something.
Another world, but for an afternoon, for two Olympian refugees, and for these children, a world of learning and sharing.
A Russian military plane with 92 people on board, including a famed army choir, has crashed into the Black Sea shortly after taking off. The Russian Defense Ministry says there is no sign of survivors, as 10 bodies have been recovered off the Sochi coast. More details in this report.
A Russian military plane has gone down in the Black Sea. All 92 passengers presumed dead, according to officials. The jet had been en route to Russia's airbase in Syria Sunday morning, carrying dozens of the renowned Red Army Choir, set to entertain troops in the run-up to the new year. The high-profile philanthropist Elizaveta Glinka is also believed to have been on board. The Defence Force says the plane disappeared from radar screens at about 5:30, just minutes after taking off from southern Russia. President Vladimir Putin offering his condolences and ordering an investigation into the cause of the crash. The Kremlin says it's too early to know what went wrong, but Russian media report sources saying the possibility of a militant act has been ruled out. Rescue teams now scouring the waters, with fragments of the plane being found about 1.5 kilometres from the coast. Local media say some bodies have also been recovered.
Thousands of residents were fleeing coastal and other hazardous areas in eastern Philippines as the powerful typhoon Nokten barreled towards the archipelago. Philippine and international weather services said the typhoon, named after a bird found in Laos, was set to hit Bicol today before reaching the rest of the main island of Luzon on Monday. Officials warned 2.5-meter high waves and landslides posed the biggest threats as Nokten closed in on the Bicol Peninsula and nearby islands. This marks the end of our bulletin for today. Now for a recap of our top stories. Christians around the world are celebrating Christmas. Pope Francis urges an end to the fighting in Syria in his Christmas address at the Vatican. President Michel Aoun attends Christmas Mass in Kirki and says he will be working to end the vacuum in state institutions. And a Russian military plane with 92 people on board crashes into the Black Sea shortly after taking off. No survivors are reported. Those are your headlines for this Christmas. I'm Linda Tamim, and on behalf of our team, I wish you all a very Merry Christmas.
سعد الدين الحريري رئيسا لمجلس الوزراء.